The four elements of heat, oxygen, fuel, and a chemical chain reaction must always be present for a fire to occur. Essentially, fire extinguishers put out a fire by removing one or more of these four elements. Fire extinguishers are the first line of defense when responding to fires of limited size and should be used regardless of whether a building has automatic sprinklers, a standpipe and hose system, or other protection equipment. Fires are separated into 5 classes based on the type of material that is burning. For example, paper, grease, electrical, or metal, and any electrical equipment in close proximity to the fire. There are many different types of fire extinguishers and fire extinguishing agents. You will know which type of fire extinguisher to select based on the fire class or material that is burning. There is not one fire extinguisher type that will work on all fire classes. The wrong type of fire extinguisher may not control or extinguish a particular class of fire, and in some cases, using the wrong fire extinguisher may make the fire situation worse. Not all fires are the same. Fires are categorized into one of several fire classes based on what materials are burning or fueling the fire. Once you know the fire class, you can select the most effective fire extinguishing agent for that particular fire. It's critical that you understand the fire class, that is, the nature of the materials that are burning, before selecting a fire extinguisher. Select each panel of the image to learn more about the 5 different types of fire and their classifications. After reviewing the content, select the X to return to and learn about the remaining images. Class A fires involve materials that generally leave ash. This includes ordinary combustibles like wood, cloth, paper, plastic, and trash. Class B fires involve materials that boil, such as flammable liquids, gasoline, motor oil, tar, oil-based paint, and flammable gases. Class C fires involve materials that carry electrical current. These types of fires occur when electricity is the source of the fire. Never use water on these types of fires, since water is a conductor of electricity and may create a serious electric shock hazard. Class D fires involve combustible metals, such as magnesium, lithium, and titanium. Fire extinguishers for these types of fires are often specific for the type of metal that is burning. Class K fires involve cooking media, such as cooking oils and fats. These types of fires usually burn very hot and can be dangerous to extinguish. Employers are responsible for providing at least the minimum number of extinguishers needed to protect a property based on, among other things, building occupancy, storage of materials, and national and local fire codes. Select each object to learn more about your employer's or facility owner's responsibilities related to fire extinguishers. Your employer, facility owner, or designated agent must assign a qualified person to inspect, maintain, test, and recharge extinguishers. This person must do a visual inspection of all fire extinguishers in the workplace every month, documented on the tag or sticker on the extinguisher or in a separate log. They must also make sure a qualified technician does annual maintenance checks on all fire extinguishers and documents the month of the annual service on one side of a tag or sticker affixed to the extinguisher. You should watch out for extinguishers that have dents, damage, corrosion, or blockages, and you must report the issue to your supervisor right away. The supervisor will take these extinguishers out of service and replace them immediately. Facility owners or employers must place fire extinguishers where they are easy to see and reach. They must be visible, never blocked or hidden, and identified with signage. Fire extinguishers must be near where people walk, near exits, and away from things that might bump or shake them. Your employer must make sure fire extinguishers are kept at the right temperature, as shown on their labels, and never stored within 4 inches of the floor. Facility owners or employers must ensure that extinguishers remain in the designated places at all times when they are not being used. If something is in the way, there should be signs showing an extinguisher's location. Cabinets holding extinguishers should not be locked unless they need protection from damage. In that case, there there must be a way to open the cabinet quickly in an emergency. Employers must provide annual refresher fire extinguisher training for employees who are responsible for their use during a fire. Every commercial vehicle, like buses, trucks, and tractor-trailers, must have a fire extinguisher on board. These vehicles carry potential fire hazards, like oil, gas, electrical wiring, tires, and other materials. A good choice for these vehicles is a dry chemical extinguisher rated for Class A, B, and C fires, often called an ABC extinguisher. If a commercial vehicle carries hazardous materials, it must carry a larger fire extinguisher. No matter the type, all fire extinguishers in vehicles must be securely mounted so they do not move, slide, or roll. Here is a short practice activity. Select and drag the type of material shown in each image to its matching fire class. When you're finished, select Check My Answer to see how you did. Select each button to learn about fire extinguishing agents, the classes of fires they work on most effectively, the method by which they extinguish a fire, and the element of the fire tetrahedron each one affects. A water fire extinguisher is essentially a giant squirt gun filled with water. Water extinguishers can only fight Class A fires. Water extinguishes fires by cooling or removing the heat element from the fire tetrahedron. Foam fire extinguishers are effective in fighting both Class A and Class B fires. The foam smothers the fire, depriving it of the oxygen element of the fire tetrahedron. Carbon dioxide or CO2 fire extinguishers are effective in fighting both Class B and Class C fires. CO2 smothers the fire, depriving it of oxygen, and is very cold when it discharges. Therefore, CO2 removes both heat and oxygen from the fire tetrahedron. Note that CO2 fire extinguishers do not have a pressure gauge, making them different from most other fire extinguishers. There are two types of dry chemical fire extinguishers, multipurpose and regular. A multipurpose fire extinguisher, referred to as an ABC extinguisher, discharges a mixture of extinguishing powders that makes it effective in fighting fire classes A, B, or C. A regular, or purple K, extinguisher discharges a standard powder that is only effective on fire classes B and C. Dry chemical powder fire extinguishers are effective on most fires that occur in a building. The dry chemical powder interrupts the chemical reaction that occurs in a fire tetrahedron, smothering the burning materials and depriving the fire of oxygen. Class D dry chemical powder extinguishers discharge a combination of specialty powders that are only effective in extinguishing Class D combustible metal fires. They are ineffective on all other classes of fire. The dry powder agent forms a crust on top of the fire, smothering the fire and removing oxygen from the fire tetrahedron. You must open a nitrogen cylinder on the back of a dry chemical powder fire extinguisher prior to using it. Wet chemical fire extinguishers are effective in fighting Class K fires. The wet chemicals in this type of extinguisher create a blanket of foam that first cools the fire, removes the heat element of the tetrahedron, then smothers the fire or deprives it of oxygen and keeps it from reigniting. A fire extinguisher label includes the manufacturer's name, model number, a mark to indicate that it meets safety standards, information about the extinguisher's contents, and instructions for use. In many regions, this information is in multiple languages. Ignoring a label and using the wrong type of fire extinguisher doesn't just mean the fire won't go out. The wrong extinguisher could cause the fire to worsen, spread, or explode. Reading the fire extinguisher label will help you select an extinguisher that will be effective in putting the fire out. Select each button to learn more about the elements included on fire extinguisher labels. Letters and pictographs on fire extinguisher labels identify the classes of fire on which the extinguisher will be effective and ineffective. If a fire extinguisher's label includes more than one letter or pictograph, it satisfies the requirements of both or all of those letter and pictograph classes. For example, a fire extinguisher with an A and B designation and corresponding pictographs could be used on Class A, ordinary combustible, and Class B, flammable liquid, fires. Additionally, a label could indicate fire classes on which the extinguisher should not be used by including pictograms for those fire types with red slashes through them. Fire extinguisher discharge times vary depending on the extinguisher size and the type of agent, but generally the discharge lasts for 30 seconds to 1 minute of continuous use. The most common sizes of extinguishers are 2 1/2, 5, and 10 pounds. 10-pound extinguishers are ideal for warehouses and will discharge agent for 30 to 45 seconds depending on the agent type. 5-pound or larger extinguishers are recommended for general use in a typical office space. 2 1/2 pound extinguishers are recommended for a vehicle and will also discharge extinguishing agent for 30 to 45 seconds. However, the volume of agent coming out of a smaller extinguisher will be significantly less than that expelled by larger extinguishers. Numbers preceding the letters on a fire extinguisher label indicate how much fire the extinguishing agent, for example, powder, gas, or water, can put out. The higher the number, the bigger the fire it can put out. Rating numbers are only required for Class A and Class B hazards. Select each object to learn how to interpret the rating numbers on fire extinguisher labels. The numbers on a fire extinguisher label in front of the letter A represent the water equivalency. Each number represents 1.25 gallons of water. For example, a 2A means the fire extinguisher is just as effective as 2.5 gallons of water, and a 4A means the fire extinguisher is just as effective as 5 gallons of water. An 8A extinguisher will fight Class A fires as well as 10 gallons of water. 8 times 1.25 equals 10. The number on a fire extinguisher label in front of the letter B indicates how much square footage the fire extinguisher agent can cover when fighting a Class B fire. For each 1B, the fire extinguisher can stop 1 square foot of Class B fire. A 10B fire extinguisher can stop 10 square feet of Class B fire, and a 20B fire extinguisher can stop 20 square feet of Class B fire. The letter C is not preceded by a number. Class C fires are nothing more than a Class A or Class B fire with electrical current as its source or in close proximity to the fire. When fighting a Class C fire, choose your extinguisher based on the Class A and Class B size ratings. The letters D and K are never preceded by a number, since these types of fire hazards vary enormously. Select each photo to answer a question about fire extinguishers. Once you've selected your answer, select Check My Answer to see how you did. Then close the feedback box to move on to the next question. To be prepared in case of a fire, ensure you clearly understand your facility's defined emergency action plan procedures and evacuation routes. Note the locations of fire extinguishers in your work area, and make sure you know the classes of fire they are most effective on, how much extinguishing agent they hold, and how to use them. When a fire occurs, the acronym RACE will help you remember what to do next. Select each button to learn what you should do in the event of a fire. If you discover a fire, your first task should be to follow your employer's emergency action plan. This may require you to sound an alarm, evacuate, fight the fire if you are trained and the conditions are favorable, or even attempt to rescue any individuals who are in immediate danger. Before rescuing others or assisting in their evacuation, ask yourself the following questions. Is the risk too great, and could I become a victim? Is this person in immediate danger? And am I capable of escorting or carrying this person to a safe location? Before choosing to rescue someone or help them evacuate, make sure you can do so without letting the fire get between you and the exit. To avoid smoke inhalation, cover your nose and mouth, and those of the person you are rescuing, with a wet rag or piece of clothing. Always sound the fire alarm, regardless of the size of the fire. The building fire alarm will alert building occupants of the potential danger and may automatically notify the fire department. Ensure that you know where the fire alarms are located in your work area and how to activate them. If your facility's emergency plan instructs you to call emergency services, be ready to provide the operator with details such as the fire's location, its severity, and the number of people in the facility. After safely assisting others who are in immediate danger and sounding the fire alarm, continue to follow your facility's emergency action plan, which may direct you to exit the building or attempt to extinguish the fire. When choosing whether you should try to extinguish a fire or exit, ask yourself the following questions. Do my facility's emergency procedures permit me to use a fire extinguisher? Do I have access to the appropriate fire extinguisher for the materials that are burning? Does the air quality in the room allow me to see and breathe easily? Is the fire small and contained, not spreading? And can I exit the area safely? If a fire occurs, always exit the area if your facility's emergency procedures do not authorize you to use fire extinguishers, you have not received proper training on fire extinguisher use, you do not feel comfortable fighting the fire, you don't know what materials are burning, you determine the fire is too large to fight, it's larger than the size of a small wastebasket. You are already using an extinguisher on the fire and it is spreading. It's no longer contained and is larger than the size of a small wastebasket. You are using an extinguisher on the fire and the extinguisher runs out of agent, or your instincts tell you to get out. If you don't know what is burning, you won't know what kind of extinguisher to use. You also won't know if there is something in the fire that may explode or produce toxic fumes. If you don't know what materials are burning in the fire, let the fire department extinguish it. When exiting an area where a fire is burning, be sure to close any doors behind you as you leave. Closing doors behind you will help slow the spread of fire and smoke in the area. Select each panel to learn more about the questions you should ask yourself before choosing to fight a fire. After reviewing the content, select the X to return to and learn about the remaining images. Before choosing to fight a fire, ask yourself, do my facility's emergency procedures permit me to use a fire extinguisher? The first factor you must consider before deciding to fight a fire is if you are allowed to use a fire extinguisher based on your facility's Emergency Action Plan, or EAP. The EAP likely identifies who is authorized to use a fire extinguisher. Your facility's EAP may authorize no one to use fire extinguishers, only appointed and trained employees to use fire extinguishers, all others must evacuate immediately, or all trained employees to use fire extinguishers. If you have not received training or your facility's EAP does not authorize you to use fire extinguishers, never fight a fire. Sound the fire alarm and evacuate the area immediately. Before choosing to fight a fire, ask yourself, do I have access to the appropriate fire extinguisher for the materials that are burning? When deciding to fight a fire, you must determine if you have the correct fire extinguisher to effectively put the fire out. In order to make that determination, you must know what materials are burning and then determine if you have the proper extinguisher for that class of fire. If you do, you'll then need to read the fire extinguisher label to determine if the extinguisher will have enough agent to be effective at fighting the fire. If not, will the fire require more extinguishers than are available to you? If you do not have the proper fire extinguisher or enough available agent, do not choose to fight the fire. Instead, evacuate the area immediately. It is best if you familiarize yourself with the fire extinguishers available in your work area, the classes of fire they can fight effectively, and the amount of agent they hold prior to a fire situation. Before choosing to fight a fire, ask yourself, does the air quality in the room allow me to see and breathe easily? Before choosing to fight a fire, you must consider the quality of the air in the area. Fires often result in smoke, and smoke inhalation kills more people than fires do. Smoke also lessens visibility, making it difficult to fight the fire effectively. If the area where the fire is located is smoky, evacuate the area immediately. Before choosing to fight a fire, ask yourself, is the fire small and contained and not spreading? Before choosing to fight a fire, consider the size of the fire. Only choose to fight fires that are small and contained, meaning they are not bigger than a small wastebasket. The time to use a fire extinguisher is at the beginning stages of a fire, since most fires double in size every 60 seconds. If the fire is spreading rapidly beyond the point where it started, it will be very dangerous to attempt to fight it. Before choosing to fight a fire, ask yourself, can I exit the area safely? Before choosing to fight a fire, it is critical that you identify a safe exit route that you can easily access without exposing yourself to the fire. Always ensure there is an exit at your back so that if the fire extinguisher malfunctions, the fire spreads, or something unexpected occurs, you can exit quickly and not become trapped. Select each object to learn the parts of a fire extinguisher and how they function. The safety pin on a fire extinguisher locks the extinguisher, ensuring that an accidental squeeze of the extinguisher's handle will not cause it to discharge. The pressure gauge indicates the amount of pressure present in the fire extinguisher. Each extinguisher has its own ideal pressure range. If the pressure is not in the green area or ideal range, the extinguisher will not work properly and must be removed from service. The pressure gauge indicates squeezing the fire extinguisher lever and carrying handle will release the extinguishing agent. This mechanism will only work after you have first pulled the pin, unlocking the extinguisher. To ensure a fire extinguisher is operable, check the inspection date on the extinguisher tag. The date on the tag should be less than 1 year from the current date. An extinguisher that hasn't been inspected within the last year may not function properly and must be removed from service immediately. The fire extinguisher's label identifies that the extinguisher has been authorized for use by Underwriters Laboratories. The label also provides information about the class or classes of fire the extinguisher will effectively extinguish, and for Class A, Class B, and Class C fires, the amount of agent the extinguisher will discharge. The fire extinguisher's discharge hose and nozzle carry and expel the extinguishing agent. These parts of the extinguisher must be free of blockages for the fire extinguisher to be effective in fighting a fire. There are 4 steps involved in using a fire extinguisher. A helpful mnemonic to remember these steps is PASS or PASS. Select the images to learn how each letter in PASS represents a step in using a fire extinguisher. After reviewing the content, select the X to return to and learn about the remaining images. If your fire extinguisher runs out of agent while you're using it, get out of the area, making sure to close doors behind you. Once you leave the building, do not go back in. If an evacuation of the building occurs, report to your muster or fire assembly point immediately. Never return a used fire extinguisher to its previous location, even if you only used it for a short period of time. A used fire extinguisher may not operate properly on a second use due to loss of pressure. Instead, notify the individual or department responsible for fire extinguisher maintenance at your facility so that they can replace, recharge, or reservice the used extinguisher as quickly as possible. Select the Start button to answer some questions about when you should choose to fight a fire and when you should evacuate.
All right, I'm heading out. Have a good weekend.
Oh, Aaron, before you go, I was going to ask you if you could take... Fire!
Huh?
There's a fire!
Whoa!
Pull the alarm. I'll get the extinguisher. Okay. Huh? Oh, no.
Portable fire extinguishers are an important component of workplace safety, but just because an extinguisher is available does not guarantee it will work correctly. Regular inspections are the only way to confirm that an extinguisher is in proper working order and will operate reliably in an emergency. A trained authorized employee must inspect fire extinguishers in your workplace every month to ensure that they are still in their designated locations, no obstructions are blocking them from view or easy access, and they are fully charged, unused, and undamaged. Anytime an extinguisher is removed from its location, it must be replaced by another extinguisher. Your employer is responsible for guaranteeing that all portable fire extinguishers in your workplace are inspected, maintained, and tested. Select the objects to learn about the different types of inspections and how often they occur. Fire extinguishers used in the workplace must be visually inspected when they are initially placed in service and at least monthly after that. Monthly inspections help ensure that an extinguisher is in its designated place and will operate properly if needed. A trained and authorized employee at your workplace will conduct the monthly inspections, as no special certification is required. A certified fire protection equipment company must annually inspect and certify fire extinguishers used in the workplace. This inspection involves a thorough examination for physical damage or any condition that may prevent proper operation. It includes any necessary repair or replacement and will normally reveal if further testing or internal maintenance is required. Every 5, 6, or 12 years, depending on the type of extinguisher, your employer must enlist the services of a certified fire protection company to perform an internal maintenance inspection. This type of inspection involves discharging the fire extinguisher and performing a complete internal examination of the cylinder shell, as well as recharging the extinguisher and then verifying that all components of it are in optimal working condition. Periodically, fire extinguisher cylinders also need to be hydrostatically tested. This method tests an extinguisher's critical components, such as the cylinder, shell, and hose assembly, for leaks and structural flaws by pressurizing them with a liquid. Fire extinguishers that fail this test are destroyed, while those that pass are reassembled, recharged, and placed back into service. In addition to understanding how to use an extinguisher, it's helpful to know the parts and pieces that make it work. Select each part of this fire extinguisher to learn more. The safety pin prevents accidental discharge by stopping the handle from being depressed downward. The pin must be pulled to actuate the handle and allow the extinguishing agent to discharge. The tamper seal is a small plastic protective device that slips through the pin and around the fire extinguisher handle and prevents the pin from falling out or from being pulled accidentally. In an emergency, the tamper seal can be easily broken. The pressure gauge indicates the amount of pressure present in the extinguisher. The needle in the sight glass gauge must always be in the green portion of the indicator. If it is not, remove the extinguisher from service and replace it. The handle is squeezed to expel the extinguishing agent. The pin must be pulled first in order for the handle to be compressed. Ensure the date on the inspection tag is current. Fire extinguishers must be visually inspected each month. All portable fire extinguishers must be designed and manufactured according to applicable fire protection standards. Equipment that meets fire protection standards is described with an alphanumeric classification based on the type and size of fire it will extinguish. For example, in this label, the letters A, B, and C represent the types of fires this extinguisher has been designed to extinguish. The nozzle or hose is where the extinguishing agent is expelled. It must be free of any blockage. You may be responsible for performing a monthly fire extinguisher inspection. Select each object to learn the recommended steps for this inspection. Confirm the extinguisher is visible, unobstructed, and in its designated location. Check that the extinguisher service tag or sticker or record is up to date and the correct inspection schedule is being maintained. Confirm that the needle is in the green or charged portion of the pressure gauge. Verify that the safety pin is intact and the tamper seal is unbroken. Check the hose for damage, such as kinks, breaks, or holes. Look inside the hose to verify that it has no blockages. Check the cylinder for any dents, punctures, corrosion, leakage, or any other type of physical damage. Make sure that the operating instructions on the nameplate are legible and facing outward away from the wall. It is a best practice to initial and date the back of the inspection tag and/or record your completed inspection according to your employer's procedure. Tell your supervisor if inspection reveals damage, an expired extinguisher, or some other issue. Select the objects to learn more about common issues that can be discovered during a monthly fire extinguisher inspection and the steps you can take to address them. If an extinguisher is blocked by an obstruction, remove the obstacle or reposition the fire extinguisher so that it is easily visible and accessible in accordance with your building and fire codes. If the safety pin or tamper seal is missing or damaged, that is a sign that the fire extinguisher has been tampered with or used. If so, remove the extinguisher from service and replace it. Whenever a fire extinguisher is discharged, even for a short burst, it needs to be removed from service, then serviced or replaced. The gauge may indicate adequate pressure after a single use, but that doesn't rule out the need for maintenance or replacement, because extinguishers that have activated may continue to lose pressure over time. If the needle is not in the green area on the gauge, the extinguisher will need to be removed from service and replaced or refilled if possible. Inspect the hose for cracks, splits, or other damage, and ensure it is free from clogs, debris, or corrosion. Test its flexibility by gently bending it to confirm it is pliable and not excessively stiff. Look for physical defects in the cylinder, such as dents and rust, as these issues can compromise its integrity and lead to malfunction or explosion. If an extinguisher is found to be damaged or inoperable during an inspection, it must be removed from service. Here is a practice exercise to test your knowledge. Select the items or conditions to look for when performing a monthly fire extinguisher inspection. When you're finished, select Check My Answer to see how you did. With the exception of checking that the cylinder is the correct size, all of these are items or conditions you should look for when performing a monthly fire extinguisher inspection.